Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana
Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana
Jamunatira Vanachari Jamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Jamunatira Vanachari Jamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jayam Vishnupad Paramhamsa Parivrajak Shuddhara Sadashri Shriman His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jayam Vishnupad Paramhamsa Parivrajak Shuddhara Sadashri Shriman Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Goswami Prabhupada Ki Jai Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
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 Reading from the third canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter number 16, Jai and Vijay cursed by the sages. And today we'll be continuing and doing text number 18. Does everyone have it pulled up? So, first, word by word. Tvataha Sanatanaha Dharmaha Rakshyate Tanubhihi Tava Dharmasya Paramaha Guhyaha Nirvikaraha Bhavan Mataha Tvata Sanatano Dharmo Tvata Sanatano Dharmo Rakshyate Tanubhistava Rakshyate Tanubhistava Dharmasya Paramo Guhyo Dharmasya Paramo Guhyo Nirvikaro Bhavan Mata Nirvikaro Bhavan Mata Tvata Sanatano Dharmo Rakshyate Tanubhistava Dharmasya Paramo Guhyo Nirvikaro Bhavan Mata Tvata Sanatano Dharmo Rakshyate Tanubhistava Dharmasya Paramo Guhyo Nirvikaro Bhavan Mata. Please chant. Tvata Sanatano Dharmo Rakshyate Tanubhistava Dharmasya Paramo Guhyo Nirvikaro Bhavan Mata. Charu. Chandan's AirPods connected to the computer. You can chant in the meantime.
Tvata Sanatano Dharmo
Tvata Sanatano Dharmo
Rakshyate Tanubhistava
Rakshyate Tanubhistava
Dharmasya Paramo Guhyo
Dharmasya Paramo Guhyo
Nirvikaro Bhavan Mata
Nirvikaro Bhavan Mata. Tvata Sanatano Dharmo Rakshyate Tanubhistava Dharmasya Paramo Guhyo Nirvikaro Bhavan Mata. Tvata from you. Sanatanaha eternal. Dharmaha occupation. Rakshyate is protected. Tanubhihi by multi-manifestations. Tava your. Dharmasya of religious principles. Paramaha the supreme. Guhyaha objective. Nirvikaraha unchangeable. Bhavan you. Mataha in our opinion. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation. You are the source of the eternal occupation of all living entities, and by your multi-manifestations of personalities of Godhead, you have always protected religion. You are the supreme objective of religious principles, and in our opinion, you are inexhaustible and unchangeable eternally. Purport. The statement in this verse, Dharmasya Paramo Guhyaha, refers to the most confidential part of all religious principles. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita The conclusion of Lord Krishna in his advice to Arjuna is, "Give up all other religious engagements and just surrender unto me." This is the most confidential knowledge in executing religious principles. In the Bhagavatam, it is also stated that if one does not become Krishna conscious after rigidly executing one's specified religious duties, all his labor in following so-called religious principles is simply a waste of time. Here also the sages confirm the statement that the Supreme Lord, not the demigods, is the ultimate goal of all religious principles. There are many foolish propagandists who say that worship of the demigods is also a way to reach the supreme goal. But in the authorized statements of Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita, this is not accepted. Bhagavad Gita says that one who worships a particular demigod can reach the demigod's planet, but one who worships the Supreme Personality of Godhead can enter into Vaikuntha. Some propagandists say that regardless of what one does, he will ultimately reach the supreme abode of the Personality of Godhead. But this is not valid. The Lord is eternal, the Lord's servitor is eternal, and the Lord's abode is also eternal. They're all described here as sanatana, or eternal. The result of devotional service, therefore, is not temporary, as is the achievement of the heavenly planets by worshiping the demigods. The sages wanted to stress that although the Lord, out of his causeless mercy, says that he worships the Brahmanas and Vaishnavas, actually the Lord is worshipable not only by the Brahmanas and Vaishnavas, but also by the demigods. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swaparantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vidam Tam Sajivam Sadvetam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanshana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Pancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vikasa Swaminiti Namine Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Tvata Sanatano Dharmo Rakshate Tanubistava Dharmasya Paramo Guyo Nirvikaro Bhavan Mata. You are the source of the eternal occupation of all living entities, and by your multi-manifestations of personalities of Godhead, you have always protected religion. You are the supreme objective of religious principles, and in our opinion, you are inexhaustible and unchangeable eternally. This verse here, it's giving us the opinion of great personalities. It says it here in the translation that this word mataha, in our opinion, the Kumaras, they're stating this as their opinion about the nature of what is actually Sanatan Dharma, right? We have this in the very first line, Tvata Sanatano Dharma. So we can see that the phrase or the word Hinduism, it isn't found in any of the ancient texts, the ancient scriptures. But the most commonly found word is this phrase, Sanatan Dharma. And in order for one to actually understand what is Sanatan Dharma, you have to understand it from the source of all Dharma. The source which this very nature is coming from. And we can see it's described here that Krishna is described as the source of all things in general, but specifically here it's mentioned as the origin of the eternal Dharma. And Srila Prabhupada in his purport, he contrasts this with the opinion of what he calls foolish propagandists. And these foolish propagandists, they give so many different ideas and interpretations about what actually is real religion. One way that Srila Prabhupada translates Dharma is religion. Here he translates it as occupation, but another translation is also religion. And just coming from India, we met a lot of so-called Sanatanis. They're very proud to practice what they have some idea of as what is Sanatan Dharma. But really, their understanding of Sanatan Dharma betrays the very definition of the word, because the word Sanatan means eternal. And their idea of Sanatan Dharma has to do with people simply born in the land of India. And they describe that Sanatan Dharma is Hindu culture, what is currently practiced in India. And they have all these different ideas that you have to be born a Hindu, and by doing so many different varieties of crazy things, you become a religious Indian who's also fired up about serving your country, protecting your nation, and facilitating things that are only of the temporary nature, such as caring for the body through creating hospitals and eye camps and these kind of things, building a strong nation, a good Sanatani. In current understanding, they want India to be the best. They want everything Indian to be the best. But we can see this betrays the very nature of what actually is Sanatan Dharma. Because Dharma isn't just religion, and it isn't equated with one particular culture or ethnicity or place in this world. Srila Prabhupada, in his introduction to the Bhagavad Gita, he lays this out very plainly and very clearly, where he contrasts what is religion by what is Sanatan Dharma. He said that with religion, you can wake up any day and you can change what faith you believe in. One day you might wake up a Christian, the next day you might wake up practicing Islam, the next day you might wake up an atheist, next day you might be a Hindu, and in this way one's so-called religious faith can change. But Dharma is different because it speaks to the very quality of an object or of a phenomenon. To explain this, Srila Prabhupada would often say that the Dharma of sugar is to be sweet, and that the Dharma of salt is to be salty, the Dharma of water is to be wet. It's the very inherent quality of an object that makes it what it is. And specifically, the jiva has the nature of Sanatan Dharma because the jiva itself is eternal. So we see that everything in this world, it has a temporary nature, because everything in this world, it's temporary. But the jiva being eternal, it has an eternal nature. And we can see that things that are eternal, they're unchanging. Whatever quality they have, they keep that quality forever, because it's an eternal existence. Srila Prabhupada would often say that the very fact that the quality of the jiva, of the soul, to be conscious, means that that consciousness must exist eternally, because that's the very nature of eternality. But it's difficult for us to properly grasp these topics of eternality, because all around us, everything that we experience is temporary, because we're in the temporary material world. So what is this very quality, this dharma? What is the actual nature of the soul? Lord Krishna, he comes as Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he reveals to us in the conversation with Sanatana Goswami. Sanatana Goswami, he asks Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Ke ami? Who am I? And why am I suffering in this material world? He was considered in society to be a very learned person, a very great man, but he explained to Lord Chaitanya, obviously in his humility, that people think of me as a great personality, but I don't even know who I am. So please explain to me. And this is when Lord Chaitanya told him, Jiver Svarupoy Krishna Nitya Das, that the eternal Svarup, or the eternal position, the eternal dharma of the jiva, is to be an eternal servant of Krishna. Krishna Das, Nitya Krishna Das. That eternal nature, that very intrinsic quality that makes up the jiva, is being an eternal servant of Krishna. And this is specifically why in Bhagavad Gita, as Srila Prabhupada starts off here in his commentary, in his purport, he quotes from the 18th chapter of the Gita that one has to simply give up everything and surrender to Krishna only. And this is because it is that very nature, that very quality of the jiva that we've been speaking about. And without one practicing that eternal nature, one will actually never be satisfied. And we can even see by the process of logic and understanding that it's this nature of the soul to serve Krishna. Like I said, everything it intrinsically has a nature. And while different things have this temporary nature, us as spirit souls being eternal, we have that eternal nature, right? So other qualities that are described of the jiva, it's the qualities of the jiva, they're similar to that of the personality of Godhead. But we have a difference in the quantity. Srila Prabhupada, he would often compare the relationship using the example of a drop of ocean water and the whole ocean. Obviously, with these examples, they're just meant to show a point. It isn't, as Srila Jiva Goswami explains, that these examples, they aren't meant to be taken completely as a complete example of life, but they're meant to illustrate a particular point. So this particular point of the drop of water in the ocean is meant to show how the qualities of the jiva are similar to that of the Supreme Lord, but the quantity that they're exhibited in is very different. And this is an eternal distinction. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he would say that there is an eternal line of demarcation between the jiva and Ishvara, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And to substantiate this, our acharyas, they quote from Bhagavad Gita, the 15th chapter. Mamai vamso jiva loke, jiva bhuta sanatana. So, just like the jiva, it has a eternal dharma, an eternal nature, it's also eternally a amsha, a part. And this word sanatana, it comes in that verse to show that this situation of the jiva being a part is an eternal designation. And this designation shows us that the part and the whole, they aren't the same. And we can see it's the very nature of parts to serve the whole. Just like if you have a clock or any sort of machine, the machines are made up of different parts. Especially this example of a clock is very nice, because if you ever open up the back of a clock, it has so many intricate little gears and different pegs which these gears are running on, different timings which they have. And by working together and serving the function of the whole, these different parts, if they're naturally engaged in that position, naturally their function is utilized. However, if you try and just take one of those parts out of the whole, out of service to the whole, then that part in and of itself is just very insignificant. What is it? Just some small gear. In and of itself, it can't really do anything. It can't really do very much. And to further substantiate this, Srila Prabhupada would often quote the verse, Nityo nityanam chetanas chetananam eko bahunam yo vidadati kaman. This describes to us what exactly is the relationship between the part and the whole. Because this verse describes to us that there are many eternal beings. There's infinite number. And there's many conscious beings. All these eternal beings, they're all conscious, chaitana. But amongst all these eternal number and infinite number of living entities, there's one supreme living entity, one supreme conscious living entity, who is providing and overseeing, controlling the other various number of living entities. So this very much puts into perspective what exactly the relationship is between the parts and the whole. And Krishna, when he asked for surrender, in that what Srila Prabhupada describes as the most confidential knowledge and the conclusion of the Bhagavad Gita, is Krishna, he asked for surrender. And naturally, surrender, it implies service. And Srila Prabhupada, he would often describe and point out that for the living entity, it's impossible for them not to do service. Again, this is all there in Srila Prabhupada's introduction to the Bhagavad Gita, where he describes that without the world, living entities, they can't properly function, can't properly exist. You can see so many people, what are they doing? Nature, they're protecting the land. And like this, if you analyze the existence of every conscious being, they're engaged in
Prabhu, there's something wrong with the audio. We can't hear properly.
It seems like it's still coming. Can you hear me properly now?
Yeah, now I can hear you properly.
Sorry about that, Prabhu.
No, it's-
But it's impossible for us to escape this position of service. But unfortunately, we're existing in this world trying to be in control, trying to have as many people under us serving us. But we can practically analyze and understand that we're going against our very nature. Like I said, this word dharma, it implies one's very intrinsic quality, what makes it what it is. So in this world, people find themselves to be so unhappy. This is because they're associating themselves with another temporary nature. Like I said, they think that their dharma is to be the father in their family. So they work very hard day and night to earn a living, to maintain for their wife, their children, their home. People surrender to their country, that kind of management, and they work very hard, and you can see people they affiliate and associate themselves very strongly with this particular material body, and with that material body they strongly associate it with various other temporary things. But unless one is situated in that eternal nature, one won't be satisfied. And we can practically see this is the position that so many people find themselves in. And this is why people are actually suffering, is because they don't know what is their eternal nature, what is their natural position. And this is one of the reasons why Krishna, why Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they come to give people that proper knowledge and that understanding of how people can actually act within their proper nature. And Srila Prabhupada, in his purport here, he references this text from Srimad Bhagavatam, where he says, in the Bhagavatam also it is stated that if one does not become Krishna conscious after very rigidly executing one's specified religious duties, all his labor in following so-called religious principles is simply a waste of time. And these verses that Srila Prabhupada's mentioning here are from the first canto, second chapter. Very famous verses. Svaipum samparo dharmo yato bhaktira dokshaje ahaitukya apratiyata yayatma suprasidati. That, again, this is talking about, again, what is that supreme dharma, what is that supreme nature. And we can see that, like I was saying in the very beginning, this verse is giving an opinion from great personalities. And we can see that what makes one a great personality, like Charadeshna Prabhu was mentioning yesterday, he quoted this verse, Yad yada charati shreshtas tatareve taro janahasayat pramanam kurute lokas taranuvartate. That people, they follow great personalities, but great personalities become great personalities because they follow the previous great personalities. And the original greatest personality is who? Krishna. So this year is coming directly from Srimad Bhagavatam and following directly in the line of Krishna. That what is this supreme dharma for humanity? It's that the attainment of loving devotional service unto the Supreme Lord. And what is the nature of that service? It is ahaitukya and apratiyata. It's unmotivated and uninterrupted. And what is the result of this? Suprasidati, that one is completely satisfied. So another analogy that Srila Prabhupada would often give is that of the fish and the water. That if you take a fish outside of the water, you can give it whatever facilities it likes for its enjoyment, for its maintenance, for its protection. But naturally, because it's disconnected from its natural position, it's never going to be satisfied. It's always going to be in a suffering condition of life. But when you place that same fish back in its natural habitat, it has everything that it needs for its maintenance, for its protection, and naturally it's very satisfied. So similarly, when the jiva reconnects with its eternal spiritual nature, it's naturally very satisfied. Next, Vasudeve Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojata Janayatyasu Vairagyam Jnanam Cha Yadahaitukam. What else comes by rendering devotional service? That one immediately acquires both what? Jnanam, knowledge, and then vairagyam, detachment. So people, when people actually become intelligent, they start to work very hard for knowledge and for detachment from different things that are binding them, that are keeping them in a suffering condition. But we can see that simply by rendering this devotional service, which is again that eternal natural position for the living entity, naturally and immediately, both knowledge and detachment, renunciation, they come about just by the process of devotional service. One doesn't have to endeavor separately by practicing devotional service and then also doing some kind of mystic yoga practices or the jnana yoga practiced by the impersonalist, but simply by the practice of bhakti yoga. You have included all of these different things. Why? Because it's the natural position for the jiva to be Satchidananda, eternal, full of knowledge and bliss. So this process of bhakti yoga, it connects us perfectly with our eternal nature. So when we're connected with our eternal nature, naturally all of these things, they come about. Because like I said, that fish, when you put them directly back into the water, it naturally has everything. So naturally, when the jiva practices Krishna consciousness, it has complete satisfaction, complete happiness, complete knowledge, complete renunciation. And then this verse that Srila Prabhupada referenced here, Dharma svanushtita pumsam vishvakshena katasuya yadi ratim shama eva hikevalam. The occupational activities a man performs according to his own position are only so much useless labor if they do not provoke attraction for the message of the personality of Godhead. And this here is the important point. Srila Prabhupada, in his purport for pretty much the rest of the purport here, he gives the other opinion of these foolish propagandists. This is the exact words that Srila Prabhupada uses. These foolish propagandists. Here they give the opinion, as Srila Prabhupada says, that any form of worship leads to the same supreme goal. And that one can worship a particular demigod, one can worship a presiding deity of a specific planet, one can, as we see nowadays so much, worship any ordinary man, worship the president of a state or a country, worship people that are regarded in society as very famous, very wealthy. Charadeshna Prabhu, we gave a couple examples of these kind of people yesterday. They say that, and any one of us who visits any of these spiritual expos, we hear so many people, they have the philosophy that all paths, they lead to the same goal. And this statement, it's refuted by Srimad Bhagavatam, by Bhagavad Gita, by great personalities, by analyzing that actually without engaging in one's eternal path, the path of Bhakti Yoga, the path of Krishna consciousness, everything else is simply what? Shrama eva hi kevalam, a waste of time. And this is a very powerful and strong statement, saying that everything else is a complete waste of time. And this obviously is understood that even, I was just reading in the 12th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, where it starts off with the very question. Arjuna, he asked to Krishna that what is the superior path? That one who practices jnana and strives for impersonalism, or one who practices bhakti and who actually worships you in your personal form? And Krishna, he spends the rest of that chapter showing how actually worshiping him in his personal form is the superior path. And he gives different qualities of one who is on this path. But it's very interesting. Srila Prabhupada, in his purport, he said that for some people, the path of impersonalism is actually recommended if they cannot worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And that eventually, after many, many, many lifetimes, they will come to the understanding of one's personal relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, why are these things called a useless waste of time? Because you have the proper process, the proper goal laid out perfectly, right in front of you. But you choose to strive for something that is temporary. In fact, eventually, because it's our eternal nature, our eternal dharma, the jiva, they will become reconnected with the Supreme Personality of Godhead at some point in time. So ultimately, these people on these different paths, whether they're worshiping the demigods, they're performing some kind of karma kandya, whether they're executing some kind of Vedic or non-Vedic principles, eventually these people, they'll come to the understanding because they'll become completely finished with all these other paths, trying all these different processes, trying all these different forms of worship, that eventually, after millions and millions of lifetimes, they'll finally come to the understanding that they should serve, they should worship Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this is why all of these other paths, they're simply a waste of time. Because there is only one supreme path that will lead one to our eternal nature. And this is because everything else that you strive for is temporary. The jiva being eternal, it can never reside, it can never be situated properly in a temporary condition. And Srila Prabhupada, he accentuates this in his purport. He says, the Lord is eternal. The Lord's servitor is eternal. The Lord's abode is also eternal. And the result of devotional service, that is also eternal. So we can see that this can be analyzed to be the one and only supreme path, because it's the only path which one results in an eternal position. And Krishna, within Bhagavad Gita, he shows us what the different paths are. He very clearly shows us that there are different paths. And these different paths, they have different results. And luckily, we're actually very fortunate. Some people, they read those statements of the Gita and hear that, oh, this planet is and these fruits and these results, they're only temporary. But for one who is in knowledge, they should know that it's actually very good that these other positions are temporary, because otherwise people will never be situated in that eternal position which they're looking for over and over and over again. So these different paths and these different processes, one verse, it comes in the 7th chapter, where Krishna, like I said, he talks about different forms of worship and different forms of knowledge, and he says that even those who worship the demigods, it's actually Krishna who gives them that faith to follow along all these different paths. So another quality of the jiva is it has minute independence. So Krishna being the controller of everything, any desire that gets fulfilled, any path that one is allowed to follow, it's actually Krishna that's giving them the intelligence, that's giving them the faith to follow that path. But he makes it very clear that the path, the results, and the goal, they don't have the same result. Krishna says that men of small intelligence worship the demigods, and the fruits are limited and temporary. But those who worship the demigods go to the planets of the demigods. But my devotees ultimately reach my supreme planet. So we can see that the destination that one reaches by these different paths, it's different. It isn't that, if you worship this demigod or follow this worship or have this other desire, right? We read that the supreme nature is one that's unmotivated and uninterrupted. So for one who has that different desire, that different fruit, that different path, they get a different result. And what are those different results? They're limited and they're temporary. And then again, Krishna, he makes the same points in the 9th chapter. Towards the end of the chapter here. Krishna, he first describes those who seek heavenly enjoyment by wanting to drink somarasa, these people that go to the moon planet to enjoy godly delights. And they seek different forms of heavenly pleasure on the so-called different heavenly planets. But Krishna, he says that when they have thus enjoyed vast heavenly sense pleasure, the results of their pious activities are exhausted, they return to this mortal planet again. And this is actually a very strong statement, that those who seek enjoyment by adhering to the principles of the Vedas, what do they achieve? Only repeated birth and death. So this is why it's called Shrama Eva Hi Kevalam. Because you work so hard to get a result. You're in this earthly planet and you're performing so many pious activities to get some kind of heavenly enjoyment. But at the end of the day, whether you're on this earthly planet, whether you're in the heavenly planets, whether you're in any planet in this material world, the ultimate end of your achievement is just repeated birth and death. So whether you're on this earthly planet, whether you're in the lower planets, whether you're in the higher planets, you're actually not getting anything different. You're working so hard to get some kind of goal, get some kind of enjoyment, but the end result is not any different than what you already have. So what you're striving for is simply useless. And then Krishna, he also says specifically that those who worship him indirectly by seeking other things from the demigods, that they worship him in an incorrect way, in a wrong way. And this wrong way, it doesn't please him. And finally, he again enunciates that those who worship the demigods will take birth among the demigods. Those who worship the ancestors will go to the ancestors. Those who worship ghosts and spirits will take birth among such beings. And those who worship me will live with me. Krishna, again and again throughout the Gita, he describes that one who thinks of him only. Krishna, in all of these different verses where he describes this, he uses this term me only. That by thinking of me, by worshiping me, by serving me, by remembering me. Krishna, he gives this, because I'm reading through these different chapters again of the Bhagavad Gita, I was shocked actually. How many times Krishna gives this reassurance that by serving me, by worshiping me, by simply remembering me, one will attain me, one will attain my abode, one will attain my service. So Krishna, he's showing and he's giving us the knowledge, the different understanding of these different paths and the outcome that one gets. And we can see it very, very clearly, right? That those who follow these other paths, they get a different result. And this different result, it's simply worthless. It's like searching for glass compared to having a diamond, right? They both have, for one who's not in knowledge, one might think that a glass, rock in the shape of a diamond is the same as a diamond. But for one who is intelligent, they actually know the value of what is a diamond. And Dhruva Maharaj, when he actually saw the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because he was striving for what? He was striving for a material kingdom greater than that of the heavenly king Indra, greater than that of anyone ever seen previously. He had material desires. He was on a different path, right? And he was searching for something else. But once he actually, by following the instructions of Narada Muni, a pure devotee who he accepted as his spiritual master, he was able to connect with the correct path. And when he had the vision of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he said this very thing, that all this opulence, all these material things that I was working so hard for, I just see it as just broken pieces of glass. And seeing Krishna as the supreme, most valuable, most pristine object of worship, of service within this whole world and beyond. So we can see this is why we should bring people to this path of the eternal nature, the eternal occupation of the jiva, which is, like I said, there's so many different ways in which one can practice devotional service in a mixed way. But the eternal nature of the jiva isn't to practice mixed devotional service. Because any other temporary thing that you associate with devotional service isn't going to relate with the nature of the jiva. Because the jiva being eternal, it only relates with those things which are eternal. So all these things that we're trying to mix in with our devotional service, which we're trying to mix in with our real spiritual nature as being an eternal servant of Krishna, those will simply just lead us astray, lead us onto so many different paths outside of the supreme path of performing unmotivated and uninterrupted devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And at the end of Srila Prabhupada's purport, to again further illustrate this point, Srila Prabhupada says that the sages wanted to stress that although the Lord, out of his causeless mercy, says that he worships the Brahmanas and Vaishnavas, actually the Lord is worshipable not only by the Brahmanas and Vaishnavas, but also by the demigods. So those same people that people are worshiping to get some kind of temporary result, some kind of heavenly material opulence or sense pleasure, those people, they're getting their very power, their very opulence themselves, they're getting it from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They aren't independent. The Supreme Lord is the only one who is completely independent of anything else. everyone else, they're dependent. And those same demigods that you're worshiping, they're also jivas within this material world. So they're also naturally eternal servants of Krishna. And even though they have what you might be striving for, what you might be working so hard to attain, they themselves aren't happy with that enjoyment, with that position, with that nature. They're also eventually hoping, striving to serve and worship purely Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When Hiranyakashipu, he asked Prahlad Maharaj where he's getting his power from. Prahlad Maharaj, he said that even you who have conquered all the heavenly planets, everyone in this material world, who the wind blows in fear of you, all of the demigods, even death itself is afraid of you. All of these people, they get their power from Krishna. I'm getting my power from Krishna. You're also getting your power from Krishna. So ultimately, these demigods are actually most satisfied, not when we're worshiping them or looking for some kind of material benefit, but they're actually most pleased when we worship Krishna. They're actually most pleased when we engage in devotional service. Like I said, not in a mixed way, but unmotivated, uninterrupted devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's naturally what pleases everybody. So if one is actually looking to do what is the most benefit for the whole world, for the whole universe, they will try and induce people to practice this supreme, singular path of Krishna consciousness. And that's why it's the mood of Krishna himself, the mood of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, of Nityananda Prabhu, of all of our acharyas, to share this Krishna consciousness with anybody and everybody that we meet, without any distinction of who is qualified, who is unqualified, who might be ready, who might not be ready. We give this Krishna consciousness to anybody and everybody. Why? Because, like I said, we understand that it's the eternal nature of every living being. It's the very thing which makes the jiva what it is, to be an eternal servant of Krishna. So nobody's ever going to be happy. Nobody's ever going to be satisfied unless they're engaging in service to Krishna. So that's why we go out on the streets, we go to the universities, we go to so many different places, conventions, expos, anywhere and everywhere. We go and we try and give people knowledge about Krishna consciousness, knowledge about pure devotional service, knowledge by which, if people actually take up to it seriously, they will be able to actually connect with that eternal nature, that eternal occupation, which they're all searching for. And I mean, so many things that I quoted here were from just Prabhupada's introduction to his Bhagavad Gita. You know, he describes all of these very amazing things, you know. So even if one, understands, reads a little bit of these books, they get eternally benefited, because there's no loss or diminution on this path of Krishna consciousness. One never loses even one small step of advancement that he makes on the path of Krishna consciousness. He'll never lose that. Versus one might work so hard life after life to attain heavenly opulence and heavenly enjoyment. But like I said, their ultimate result, what they ultimately get, is just repeated birth and death, what they have already anyway. So we should try and induce as many people as we can by distributing these books, by going out on the streets and chanting publicly so everybody can hear, and by making ourselves available to associate with people that are trying to come to Krishna consciousness. we should engage in all of these activities, because otherwise people are just going to keep on going in this cycle of birth and death, working for things that are just a useless waste of time. And we don't want people to waste their time. We don't want people to continue to suffer, because one who understands that they're an eternal spirit soul, eternal servant of Krishna, they understand that every other conscious living being is also an eternal spirit soul, an eternal servant of Krishna. And we're eternally connected, we're eternally related in that service to Krishna. So the devotees, they feel compassion for every single living entity, that, oh, how this person is suffering so much, being disconnected from Krishna, being disconnected from service to Krishna, being disconnected from worshiping Krishna and serving Krishna's devotees. So we should keep on going very strongly, very emphatically, with inspiring every living entity that we meet to take up to Krishna consciousness. And most importantly, even, we should keep on seriously practicing ourselves and keep on this supreme path of Krishna consciousness, because we can't give what we don't have if we aren't practicing properly, and we're trying to inspire other people to practice properly. What kind of inspiration are we going to give? Luckily, by Srila Prabhupada's supreme intelligence, he's given us these books by which, even if we're the most useless and fallen guy, if we can even give them one book, at least they can associate with Srila Prabhupada. Through his instructions, through his writing, Prabhupada said he wouldn't live eternally there in his books, but in Prabhupada's books, he writes again and again how important the association is with devotees. And for one who's practicing Krishna consciousness, they need to be in that like-minded, connected association with those who are practicing seriously. That's what makes them strong. That's what gives them that strong foundation by which they can keep going on that path and not stumble and fall off and go into all these other mixed avenues, mixed paths, which actually just waste their time. That's all they do. They simply waste so much of their valuable time that they could have been practicing the pure process of devotional service. So, it's very important, and it should be our most important activity to bring people to this highest occupation. And it's what is desired by all of the great personalities and by Krishna himself. The Kumaris here who are speaking, they're also desiring very much for everyone to come to this eternal occupation of Krishna consciousness. So by reading this pastime, by reading these prayers, we can beg and pray for the mercy of those great personalities, by which we can continue to induce people to what is really Sanatana Dharma, what is really the only thing that will satisfy them, the only thing that will make them happy. So I'll conclude this here. So much could have been spoken on this verse, probably. I didn't do it that much justice, but if people have some kind of questions or comments, things we can discuss, we can do that now. I don't know how much time we have, maybe like 8 minutes or something, but if any Prabhus have anything. Charan Prabhu?
Question to you.
Yes, Prabhu.
So, usually people...
Prabhu, could you put the computer close to him so we can hear what he's saying? Thank you.
You can turn it around so they can see you also.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Jai Hare Krishna Prabhu. Always Prabhupada. Jai.
Always Prabhupada. So, people usually come to the path of devotional service by Prabhupada's mercy somehow, by a book or by meeting another devotee. But, I mean, challenges come in devotional service. At least I don't know about everybody, but like I have challenges. So sometimes it feels like, okay, if we take to something that is more understandable to our material mind, then it gives us at least like some peace of mind. Instead of, for example, because sometimes it can feel very hard actually to understand what Prabhupada is giving or what Bhagavatam is giving us. So what would you tell such a devotee?
So, yeah, I mean, obviously, the principle that we can understand is that if we're finding some kind of struggle in trying to practice the process of devotional service, it's just some kind of maya normally that we're in, by over-identifying with our body, overly identifying with our mind. Prabhupada, he described so many times how the process of Krishna consciousness, it's easy, it's blissful, it's possible for anybody. But unfortunately, more times than we would like to say, people, like you said, they end up settling for something else other than pure devotional service because they think, oh, like this is too difficult, this is too hard, maybe I can settle for this. And obviously, whatever devotional service that they practice, they make advancement. But it's not easy for one to go back home, back to Godhead, unless they follow this very strict, very supreme path of Krishna consciousness, where one becomes completely free of this material attachment. So one who is intelligent, they can analyze the nature of the world that in any way, in any position that I'm in, I'll have some kind of difficulties because it's the material world. So even if I'm having difficulties in my Krishna consciousness right now, if I leave and practice something else, I'll also be having difficulties. Vishnu Chaitanya Prabhu, he once explained to me that by one's guna and karma, actually the happiness and distress that they have allotted for them in this life is already arranged. So whether one is practicing some kind of path or not, they're gonna experience some kind of bliss and some kind of suffering, just naturally through the goings of life. So one who's intelligent, they'll understand that in any position of life that I put myself in, I'm gonna be having difficulties. But if I take these difficulties for Krishna, for my spiritual master, and I push through those, and I stick to this supreme path of trying to practice pure devotional service, that I'll actually get the supreme result at the end of life by struggling hard for Krishna, practicing Krishna consciousness, and also understanding that the only way I'm going to overcome these difficulties anyway is by practicing Krishna consciousness. Obviously there are different services, there are different positions for one in Krishna consciousness. If one is feeling disturbed in one service, in one ashram, in one situation, there's so many other places that one can go and they can still perform pure devotional service. So we should, I mean, that's a big reason why we're having this wonderful Varnashram farm project, because we can have so many facilities to properly engage everyone in Krishna consciousness. So that's what I would say, if that satisfies you, Prabhu. Anything else?
I believe you said it was Rupa Goswami, Jiva Goswami, who has Jiva Goswami, who says like these examples and analogies that are given have a very like specific use, and they can't be extended to other things. And it's like that's such a key point, because if you just like kind of let these examples run and you try to just apply it to like a whole philosophy, for example, like a drop in the ocean, it's like, yes, the key of life is to merge back into the ocean, become one. It's like you can easily just like get super carried away and miss the whole point, actually. It was one other thing I was going to say along those lines. The interesting thing, especially like we'll see with the use, because you quoted so many different analogies that Prabhupada gives. And the interesting thing also, I wish I had the direct reference. I remember hearing Guru Maharaj specifically say this. It's like Krishna will explain, like when he was explaining his opulence to Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita, and he's saying, I believe he says like I'm Indra at one point, like I'm like in demonstrating among what?
Demigods, I'm this person, among sages, I'm this person.
Among what's it called? I'm like the sun.
Yeah,
and
among snakes, I'm this person, among nagas, I'm this person.
And it's like, and these are all material things. It's like, but it's to try to like help those who are hearing understand. But it's like then even still, it's like, but how can you really understand? It's like his opulence is so inconceivable, and it's like, so he has to give us these analogies and examples, but it doesn't mean that just. But again, it's like still they have their very specific use and set purpose, and if one tries to go outside of that, it's just like it can get like really confusing. It's just when I think of sections like that in Bhagavad Gita, and you meet people who are just like, yeah, I read the Bhagavad Gita, and it's like they didn't read the purports. It's like I can't imagine what might have been going through their minds. Just like, how do you understand this without that proper authority and guidance to understand like where this applies and how it all fits, to actually get the proper conclusion. So anyways, I just like that.
Yeah, that's a very key point, that these examples and analogies, they're specifically given to illustrate a specific point. And that section and quote I was saying about Jiva Goswami, he specifically describes that when you try and give examples relating the Supreme Lord to the Jiva and how to understand that relationship, it's very easy to like take another step, and then you all of a sudden you fall into like a big pit of just like complete misunderstanding. Like I was going through a lot of these examples previously, just like that one you said, the example of the ocean and the water is meant to show that the qualities are the same, but the quantity is different. But for one who just superimposes that example on the whole philosophy, they're like, well, if I'm a drop of water and Krishna is the ocean, a drop of water is always merged with the ocean, so I must be merged with the Supreme Lord. Similarly, like that example of the spark and the fire. That example of the spark and the fire is meant to show the supreme quality and nature of how great a fire is, and a spark is coming from that, but it's not the same as the whole. But some people might say, well, if a spark falls on the right part of the ground where it's nice and dry, it can also create a similar big fire because it's a spark. But that's not what the example is trying to say.
I hate when smart college student pundits try to do that. It's annoying as hell.
Similarly, also this like famous example of the Upanishads of like the pot and the air. Yeah, that's not meant to be like the supreme philosophy of life about pot and air, but it's meant to show the temporary nature of our current material body, and how everything material is actually coming from Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But the Mayavadis, they take examples like that and they literally superimpose it on the whole philosophy of life. And then just like all of our acharyas, they say like so many times that you can't 100% equate the jiva to a pot, because they're two completely different things. You can't say that like all of the qualities of this pot, you can superimpose them all completely on the jiva. But these examples that are given in Shastra, that are given by our acharyas, they're meant to illustrate a specific point. And that material example can take you to that specific point. But ultimately, all these examples, they're material. They have limitations. And they aren't meant to describe our whole philosophy. Examples about the nature of the Supreme Lord are actually a little easier, and they're a little more full. Like
Jai, Vijay Kumar Prabhu ki Jai. What the hell happened, bro?
What?
The class is not going.
Oh,
Can I
yeah,
see your video? Can I see a video call?
yeah. Is it live stream? Is this like the bonus footage for the live stream?
Bonus footage, yeah. No.
Oh, cool, we're live. Hare Krishna.
Are we live
Hare
streaming?
Krishna world. You're
Hare
watching the
Krishna.
behind the scenes of the Bhagavatam class,
Jai
where we
exposed.
purchase
Vijay Kumar
programs
was
for the
shopping
Supreme
during the
Lord
class.
from Walmart. Okay, I guess I'll leave this now. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.